What is known already about self-determination theory's basic psychological need satisfaction at work? Let's take stock. This meta-analysis took stock of what we already know about the antecedents and consequences of the basic psychological needs at work. They examined whether each of the needs is important and whether it's okay to use an overall need satisfaction scale. They also tapped a little bit into which of the scales that are currently available would be best to measure the three basic psychological needs in the work context. So, what predicts the basic psychological needs at work for autonomy, belongingness, and competence? On the one hand, employee characteristics seem to matter. Within this meta-analysis, it was shown that personality in terms of Big Five, but also lower order personal traits were important in predicting the three basic needs. People who are, for example, extroverted, have high self-esteem, are mindful, and have a proactive personality are more likely to have their basic psychological needs satisfied in the work context. However, it's not only the employee's personal characteristics that matter. Also, the context, the work environment matters. In terms of structural antecedents, the authors could establish that job stressors such as role ambiguity and organizational politics would make it harder for employees to have their needs satisfied. Job resources such as autonomy and social support, on the other hand, contributed to need satisfaction. At the organizational level, there are things like organizational support, justice, and fit that might help to satisfy the basic psychological needs for autonomy, belongingness, and competence. Social antecedents also seem to be important apart from the structural antecedents. So, more the social environment or the relationships at work seem to matter too, which are aspects that have been examined as social antecedents were positive leadership styles such as transformational leadership and LMX. It was shown that these actually help employees to get their basic psychological needs satisfied. What are the implications of basic psychological needs satisfaction at work? Well, this study uncovered that relationships have been established with motivation, well-being, attitudes, and behavior. Let's unpack these in the next following slides. What are the relationships between the three basic psychological needs? If the three needs are independent, these relationships shouldn't be too high. Results show that indeed autonomy, competence and relatedness, and autonomy and relatedness are related. The relationships run from 0.45 to 0.61 if you look at the population correlation. However, these results are not that high that we would assume that all three needs are alike. They seem to have their own. What about the relationship between the satisfaction of the three basic needs for autonomy, belongingness, and competence and motivation? Let's have a look at autonomous and controlled motivation, yet another aspect of self-determination theory. According to SDT, the more the needs are satisfied, the more one would develop autonomous rather than controlled motivation. And here you can have a look at this based on the results of relative weight analysis based on meta-analytic correlations. So what you see here are the results of the relationship between each of the needs and the different aspects of motivation while controlling for the effect of the satisfaction of the other needs. So you see here the effects of autonomy relatively to, or if we take into account also the effects of competence and relatedness. And results are largely in line with the assumption that the more the needs are satisfied, the more autonomous one's motivation becomes. First, let's have a look at amotivation, or not having any motivation at all. You could see that this type of motivation goes hand in hand with negative, goes hand in hand with having no satisfaction of autonomy and competence. There's no relationship with relatedness. Something similar happens with the second type of motivation, external motivation, which is being motivated to get rewards and avoid punishments from others, such as when you work hard to get a compliment from your boss or client, or when you're studying really well to avoid your parents being mad at you. Here you can see that if you're motivated by this type of motivation, then again your need for autonomy and your need for competence are absolutely not satisfied. You might, however, experience some relatedness satisfaction. Introjection is the next type of motivation in line. If they are introjected, people punish and reward themselves. because they want to get like positive emotions, like you work hard to feel proud of yourself, or you don't want to feel ashamed when you have to hand in a particular project by the deadline. If you're introjected motivated, then you can feel competent or related, but you don't experience satisfaction of the need for autonomy yet. This only happens when you are autonomously motivated, when you are identify with a particular activity because you do it because you think it's important or valuable, or when you're intrinsically motivated by an activity you think it's interesting or fun to do. So you see that the relationship between the satisfaction of autonomy, competence, and relatedness go hand in hand with these types of autonomous motivation. You could also see a particular strong impact or relationship of autonomy on intrinsic motivation, and somewhat less for the others. In sum, these meta-analytic results show that indeed, the more people get their basic psychological needs satisfied at work, the more they will become autonomously motivated for their job. Is satisfaction of the needs for autonomy, belongingness, and competence important for people's well-being at work? Here you again see the results of relative weight analysis based on meta-analytic correlations. And you can indeed see that satisfaction of the needs for autonomy, competence, and relatedness all relate positively to experiencing positive effect, general well-being, and even have a spillover effect to life satisfaction. You could see that autonomy and relatedness also positively relate to engagement. Autonomy, competence, and relatedness are also inversely related to negative effect. That means the more you experience autonomy, competence, and belongingness or relatedness, the less you experience negative effect. Similar effects hold for strain and burnout. So you would see that indeed SET's assumption that the more people get their needs satisfied in the context of work, the more they will experience well-being. There's one exception. Competence seems to be unrelated to engagement if we take into account the effects of the need satisfaction for autonomy and relatedness as well. This is probably due to the high relationship between satisfaction of the need for autonomy and engagement, such that the correlation that is there between competence satisfaction and engagement gets reduced to non-significant when we do take into account autonomy satisfaction. Is the satisfaction of the basic psychological needs for autonomy, belongingness, and competence also positively related to employee attitudes and behavior? Results of meta-analytic relative weight analysis indeed again show support for SDT's assumption that basic need satisfaction adds to people's optimal functioning. Satisfaction of the need for autonomy, competence, and relatedness relates positively to job satisfaction, generally also relates positively to affective commitment, and negatively to turnover. People who feel satisfied in the need for autonomy, competence, and relatedness also perform well, are creative, proactive, and they generally put effort in their job. If you have been very careful in watching this video, then you might have seen that there's something funny going on with competence. Satisfaction of the need for competence relates negatively to effective commitment and positively to turnover intention. This might mean that people who are feeling really competent at work might actually be inclined to look over and seek their luck elsewhere to learn some more. In sum, this meta-analysis showed that satisfaction of the needs for autonomy, belongingness, and competence at work are influenced by employee characteristics as well as environmental characteristics and have implications for people's motivation, well-being, attitudes, and behavior at work.